that first year, man, I hung on to her coattails like a baby possum holds on to its mama. I'm not even kidding. I had no idea what I was doing. I was absolutely clueless. Because all those lesson plans that they taught us to write,
It's
yeah.
totally different. It is
Yep.
totally different.
Yep.
Welcome to episode 9 of your favorite teacher's favorite teacher podcast.
Good morning. I'm Nina Anderson, and I have been in education. This is my 21st year.
21st year. Wonderful. I know there's a lot of wonderful stories in that. And what we're going to do, as usual, we'll start the podcast off like we always do. And we're going to start it with what I like to call the journey. In this part of the podcast, I like to have the guests tell the audience about their journey through education from day one to where they are right now. And so I'm going to turn the mic over to Miss Anderson and and I know you don't like me calling you Miss Anderson, so I'll say Nina. I
Thank you.
apologize.
Thank
Uh,
you, Will.
I'll turn the mic over to you, Nina, and let you talk about your journey through education.
Okay. I think we're going to have to rewind back to when I graduated from high school.
Oh,
Can
okay.
I go that far back?
Yes,
Because
sure.
it's important. It's an important piece to my journey. Throughout high school, academics came fairly easy to me.
Mm,
I was in, at that time, it was called honors courses. And I was one of those kids that could sit outside in the hallway. I don't know. We must have had 15-minute passing periods. I don't know. Yeah, but I could do my homework. I could whip out an essay in 15 minutes and earn an A on it. I suspect, though, that those essays didn't get read. Um, Actually, I know that I have confirmation on it because when I was a senior, my girlfriends and I all wrote an essay on Don Quixote.
mm-hmm.
And within that essay, we buried lines that made no sense to the essay. And we still got A's on it. So that's a piece of my journey right there is the time spent on something,
Yeah.
and then the was it really that important?
Well,
But
that teacher probably knew how amazing of a writer you were. It was just like,
I
I'm going to give
wasn't.
her an A.
I absolutely was not. But anyway, so I got accepted to the University of Texas when I was a junior. Back in the day, I don't think they still do this anymore, but you could get accepted if depending on your grade point average and your class rank when you were a junior in high school. So you can
Awesome.
skate through being a senior
Oh,
because
yeah.
you're already going to school. So I went to the University of Texas with aspirations to be a nurse.
Oh, wow.
When mhm, mhm. So it was quite a shock to me to learn that you actually have to go to class in college, but nobody tells you that. Like there's not like a set, like there's a schedule for the classes, but really not for you.
Right.
And so I went from this, pretty sheltered suburban girl to the city of Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And about 9 months later, I got a letter from the dean, and it was a letter excusing me from the University of Texas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I flunked out. But
Is that a nurse thing? Because my wife, who is a nurse now, like she said the first part of her school year, she flunked out too.
I mean, I don't know. I'd like to say that it was because the classes were hard, but honestly, I don't know if they were. But I had a great tan. Anyway, so that was probably one of the hardest things I had ever had to do was break that news to my mom and dad. I'm a first generation college bound child. I'm an only child. My parents are, my dad was British and my mom is Serbian.
Okay.
Neither one of them had any kind of formal education, and emigrated with me when I was 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
So um, I was not born here, but so anyway, I went to Berlin and Brenham
Hmm.
the following year, and I wasn't allowed. My parents didn't allow me to get a dorm there, so I had to catch a bus in the parking lot of one of the nearby high schools every day and ride the bus up.
Mm.
And funny enough, I became a stellar student at that point and decided that my true passion was accounting. Mhm.
Caught me off
Actually,
guard with that one.
yeah, actually what happened is I took an accounting course and I like the numbers made sense to me.
Hmm.
And so it came pretty easy to me. And so then I was like, perfect. My destiny is to be an accountant. I don't know what that is, but that is what I'm going to do because I earned an A in the pre-accounting class. So the following year, I earned my way back into the major college system. I went to Sam Houston State as an accounting major and earned my accounting degree by the hair of my chinny chin chin because turns out I'm really not that good at accounting, but I'm good at reading and I've always been a reader. And so I was able to get by doing a whole lot of reading and getting my work done
Hmm.
consistently. So fast forward a bit, and I worked in banking for a while. I was working for First Interstate Bank
Hmm.
right out of college, and met my husband in college, and worked in the financial part of First Interstate, which is now Wells Fargo, by the way.
Oh, okay.
And I, oddly enough, didn't find joy in what I was doing. And so I moved to human resources, where
HR.
I was a recruiter in human resources. So I like that job. Here's the thing about me is I am deeply rooted in being an introvert. So, but I find people interesting.
Okay.
And so that was a really good job for me because it allowed me to hear people's stories, but also to hold on to those introverted tendencies. Anyway, so I worked there for a few years and then had my kids. My daughter was born and my husband's business was doing well. So we decided that was a great time for me to stay home.
Okay.
And my son had started kindergarten. My daughter she was maybe, I don't, she was less than a year old. And so I stayed home for until she was about getting ready to go to, she was going to Mother's Day out. And my son was in third grade.
Okay.
And I was a room mom, class mom, whatever they call them, room mother, I guess,
Hmm.
for my son's third grade class. And he had the most amazing teacher. He would come home every day. And my son is a very quiet, shy kid. And he would come home every single day telling me about how special his teacher, Mrs. Gunn, made him feel.
Mm.
And, I realized she was making him feel seen.
Right.
I- She would be able to pull out just the tiniest little bits about him and make a big deal when she found out he loved to play baseball.
Mm.
That she was like, oh my gosh, I am a huge Astros fan. I mean, worked so hard. And I would go up to the school as when we were allowed to take our kids, our younger siblings up and work in the school. And I just loved being there. I loved even the tiniest, and being a room mother is an important job or a class mom.
Right.
Um, because it's so helpful to teachers. Um, and just the ability to know that I was doing a little bit of something to
Hmm.
help them out. And I something just started tugging at me, you
Mm.
know, and I asked my mom, who my mom and dad live close by, and I said, I really feel like I want to start back to work. And they were like, oh, good. Are you going to go back to the bank? And I was like, nope, I am going to go substitute.
Ooh, what did they say about that?
They were fine with it, and because it
Okay.
wasn't a daily gig until it became a daily gig. Um, and so I subbed for as often as I could,
Hmm.
and my parents kept my daughter and um, had a wonderful time. All my experiences in the schools were phenomenal, and you could just feel how the kids would miss their teachers when they were gone. And I just kept thinking, my gosh, I want to be that person. Like I want to be someone who makes such an important impact on these kids because like these are core memories for them, right?
It is.
And knowing that their interactions with those humans they're looking up to every day is so important to their lives. And I was like, okay, well, I have an accounting degree. I can be a teacher. What you can't. Mm, mm-mm. You have to be certified.
Yep.
And, or at that time, you had to be certified. And so I looked into certifications. I am a learner, I'm constantly learning.
Hmm.
And when I found out that the University of Houston at the main campus had a program for um, people who held degrees who wanted to get a teacher certification. And so it was the whole sort of it was like going to school to get your undergraduate,
Yeah.
except for the student teaching part. And so I went back to school, went to the University of Houston, and earned my certification in 2 years with two small kids at home.
Wow.
Had a lot of support from my husband and my parents.
Hmm.
Went full time in the summertime. I actually took my kids up to University of Houston with me, and they would sit out in the hall while I was going to classes.
Oh,
And
wow.
uh, yeah, they're almost 5 years apart. So my son was really such a good helper with his little sister at that time, and they were just well behaved, so nobody ever said anything.
Right.
Um, so I got my certification, and I started at one of the local junior highs
Hmm.
and but I couldn't get in at the time because I graduated or got my finished my tests and all that, and so I was done and ready by December. So it was January, and I couldn't get in except into ISS, which is in school suspension.
Ooh.
And so my husband was like, "Well, do you want to do it or not?" By the way, we took out loans to pay for this school loan, so
Yeah.
maybe you do. And so I went ahead and took it because I mean it's ISS. How bad could it be, right? You only have a few students.
Ooh.
Um, and so I did. I took it, and um, then in May I was accessed from that campus, and I ended up with. I mean, it was my dream job, teaching reading.
Awesome.
We didn't teach reading and writing at the same time at one of the oldest junior highs in our school district.
Hmm.
And that is where I met um, Lisa White. She was Lisa Marsh at the time.
Miss
And
White.
that first year, man, I hung on to her coattails like a baby possum holds onto its mama. I'm not even kidding. I had no idea what I was doing. I was absolutely clueless because all those lesson plans that they taught us to write,
It's
yeah,
totally different. It is
yep,
totally
yep,
different.
yeah. And I've done some long-term sub jobs, nothing, there's nothing like actually being the classroom teacher. And
Yes.
now I'm like, okay, hold on. When I said that I wanted to make an impact, I didn't actually mean on 140 kids. Um, my first year, like, can we, because ISS hardly ever had any kids in the school I was in. So
Right.
But it was amazing. And I learned so much from Lisa and Glenn Welsh. He is still teaching at that school.
Hmm.
Lisa's still at that school. I learned so much from Glenn. He made such a huge impact on me. He can be a little curmudgeonly, and he would agree with me. Um, but I learned so much about writing from him.
Right.
I learned so much from Lisa about engaging our kids and helping make those connections. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. And I stayed there for about 7 years.
Okay.
And then our school district decided that they were going to have these positions called instructional coaches.
Mm-hmm.
I told you I was a learner.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in the role of an instructional coach, there's a lot of learning that happens in order to share that learning with the teachers who you coach. And it's, ideally, well, not ideally, but the position is similar to an athletic coach,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where we're there to help hone skills and
Yes.
partner with teachers um, as they learn and grow.
Hmm.
And so I became an instructional coach on a campus closer to my house, but opposite from my where my heart was. Um, and I stayed there for about 4 or 5 years, and the curriculum coordinator position came open in our school district, and that's how I landed in the job I am in now. And I still feel like I'm new at it, and I guess this is probably my sixth year in that job.
Well, you
But
are
that's how I
downright
and do
phenomenal at that
well.
job.
Thanks.
I I am able to make it day by day because of you. So,
You
and
you you would figure it out.
no, no, I'm still questioning myself. But
Oh, me
you,
too.
you,
So welcome.
you brought up a great point earlier about being prepared. Um, I liken it to my military career. They send us to these military occupational specialty schools, a mouthful. And we're there. Mine was like 9 months. I got out, I go into the fleet, basically doing my job. And the first thing that my supervisor told me, my staff NCO told me was, everything you learned at school, throw it out your head. We're gonna teach you everything. And that's how I felt as I came into education because just like you, I had these pie in the sky dreams of what education was. Everything that they were telling us was like sunshine and rainbows. And I got into the classroom and they're like, you can't do that. you so it's I I just wanted to share that because I try to keep everything straightforward to the audience. So if there are any teachers out there thinking about becoming a teacher, there are fantastic things that you're going to learn becoming a teacher, but there's going to be even more fantastic things that you're going to learn when you get into the classroom. Um,
Absolutely.
would you agree with that?
100% I would.
Yeah.
Um, there's, I can't think of a more rewarding, career.
Hmm.
And, well, staying home with my kids was also very rewarding, um, but
Yes,
of
that
course
is
that's,
true.
it's personal preference, I guess, but, um,
Well, and you say rewarding, which kind of leads us into the next part of the podcast, the yin and the yang. So our best day as an educator and our worst day as an educator. And I know our best days can be one of, just downright rewarding. But what I like to do is make sure that we end on a good note. So when I have the guests do this, I ask them to start off with that, worst day as an educator, and then on a happy note, end it off with your best day as an educator. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you and let you talk about those 2 days. And if it's more that you want to talk about, you can do that as well. Just tell the audience about your worst and best day as an educator.
So, my mind immediately goes to the pandemic,
Oh, yes. Yes.
but I think I'm going to go further back.
Okay.
My first year in my current role,
Hmm.
Harvey hit.
Oh, yeah.
And Harvey was like across our city, was devastating.
Hmm.
And I think that the morning after the storm was probably my worst day in education because we had to close our schools.
Hmm.
We lost an entire school. We had to rebuild it from the ground up,
Wow.
basically. So many of our children lost their homes because of the floodwaters,
Hmm.
and so many of their lives were turned upside down. Um, we went from classroom educators and um, ESC educators to the ground, helping deliver things that people needed, just basic supplies, just soap and fresh water um, and just trying to rebound from that. School had just started.
Hmm.
Um, it was incredibly hard because so many had lost so much.
Right.
And I think that really hits, that was probably, and that's obviously more than one day,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Um, as was the pandemic. The difference, I think, between Harvey and the pandemic is um, Harvey was, I just felt so more isolated because of, because it was just trying to figure out how do we help as many as we could. Not that I was isolated and wanting to do that. That's not what I mean. I mean, it was just such a different feeling for me because during the pandemic,
Hmm.
I worked with a team
Hmm.
to get our kids through. And I did work with a team to help our kids through Harvey, but I think it was just because of the devastation
Right.
that it left behind
Yes.
for our community.
Well, and I'm kind of glad that you brought that up, even though that is your worst day, because one of the things that we get to point out is, and a lot of the community do not understand the impact that educators have on things like that. You talked about how you guys volunteered to help the community, just passing out simple necessities like soaps. And when people think about educators, like that's the furthest thing from their minds is the community service that educators give. And community service is a huge part of education. Um, in districts, I've seen educators do drives to get kids clothes during Christmas time, getting them toys. Like, um, I liken it to the stuff that, once again, that we did in the military. There was a lot of service that we did in the military, volunteering our time for the community. And educators do the same exact thing. They volunteer their time, their money, everything to ensure that the community that they service is good. And once again, I know you say this was like one of your worst days, but I appreciate you sharing that with the audience because it does point out the importance of educators in the community.
Yeah. I mean, it was hard. We would pass out supplies when one of the elementaries closed down. They were relocated, but many of the teachers that worked in that elementary, their lives were disrupted,
Hmm.
devastated by the storms as well. So um, I taught I think I taught first grade
Mhm.
for a couple of weeks in a little teeny tiny classroom because we moved them off to one of our annexes, the kids who attended that school, um, because we didn't want teachers to lose their days,
Right.
right? And so I mean, we all pitched in, but it was that was hard. It wasn't. It was hard because of what was happening.
Right.
So
Right. There's a lot of emotions that go into it, a lot of uh, uh effort, a lot of time. So
mm,
yes, I totally get that. I totally
mhm.
understand that. What about your best day?
Okay, see, that's the hard one for me,
It's because
right?
it's so many of them, right?
Yeah, I mean, really, it is. It is. I think about the best day when I was back in my classroom
Hmm.
and it was my first year of teaching and man, I don't know, I guess the principal at the time, he was transitioning out and he must have been like, yeah, let's see what this lady can do because this is my second career, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I was a little bit older than almost everybody, and so I guess I don't, and I know it's not true. It's always just how the schedule is built, but I just felt like I had um every okay, so you think about those kids that are full of personality, man,
Right.
right? Um, and they are, that they're going to do well because of their personality.
Mhm.
But when they're 12 and you need them to just for a second listen. I mean, I'm going to talk to you for maybe 7 minutes. I just need you to mm, mm-mm, mm-mm. No. Um, but so I had I don't know 140 of kids anyway. It
Uh-huh.
was hard. It was hard that first year for me, and I had a kid. I'll never forget his name. I'm not going to say it though.
Right, right.
Um, he's a bright guy. I mean, smart as a whip. I taught both pre-AP and academic classes, and he was in an academic class and just consistently did not do well because he didn't do anything,
Right.
right? When he would read, he was a reader. He
Mm.
was a reader. I think he was really a closet reader. I don't think he wanted his friends to know he was a reader. Um, the connections that he could make to what he was reading were just incredible. And when he was in class and he would write,
Mhm.
his writing, it just came so naturally to him. Um, but then he just didn't turn anything in. And so he failed. And it wasn't just my class. He
Mhm.
failed the year. And so they retained him.
Okay.
And at the end of the year, I had a ongoing conversation with his mom, and when we realized that he was going to be retained, um, she said, "I know that you have had him for a whole year, and I know that it's probably against the rules, but I want you to have him again."
Mm.
And I said, "Okay, I will make that deal with you, but I want him to move to pre-IP."
Mm.
And she was like, why he wasn't successful in academic. And I said, right, he wasn't successful not because he couldn't do the work. He wasn't successful because he didn't do the work.
Mm.
So even if he doesn't turn anything in, if he's in pre-AP, I'm going to be able to challenge him a little bit more.
Right.
And so she agreed. She's like, I mean, fine, whatever. I don't, that's fine. And as soon as he found out that she and I had had that conversation, that kid was a different kid.
Really?
And that was really when I realized, when kids know that you believe in them,
Mhm.
they begin to believe in themselves.
Right.
So maybe that was my best day, but I've had a lot since then.
Yeah, well, I mean, you to be able to tell the story of how you turned a student around like that, um, eh, to all the
No,
teachers that
no,
I
I
know,
didn't do it, right? All I did was believe.
just make
It was on him.
you recognized it and you acknowledged it, and the kid made the change.
Mhm,
And like that to me is a dream come true as an educator. Um, I to me, one of the hardest things is to see the potential in students and they don't see that potential in themselves, or they don't act on that potential. Like that is the hardest thing, to watch a student who can perform up here but just refuses to, and society sees them on a much lower level. Like that's hard to me to watch that happen and not get the student to understand what they
mhm.
can do. Um, yeah, whew, that's a
I would love
great.
to tell you though that he, turned around and made straight A's through the rest of that following year. He absolutely did not, but um he he did turn in probably half of this stuff. So he
Well,
made it
and
successfully.
I mean, okay. So here's the thing. Personal story. I I had an English teacher, which I will tell this story when I interview myself for my favorite teacher's favorite teacher podcast. But he showed me and a couple of other students that he truly believed in me. Now, I didn't turn around that school year and make straight A's. Um, Matter of fact, I didn't turn around for years to come. But it was years later when I was in the military that his words reverberated in my head, and it did change me later on as an adult, to because I understood what he said later on. And I say that to say this to you, maybe that kid didn't make straight A's, but when they know that you care, like you become that voice in their head later on in life. And because of what you did for him, who knows? This kid may come up with the cure for cancer. I don't know. But
I think he's
uh,
a real estate agent. I do. And I think that because one of my friends has a daughter that's his age, that was his age.
uh-huh.
And at some point, and this has been a few years ago now,
Mhm.
he said, I don't know how my name came up, who even knows? And he's like, oh my gosh, will you please tell her I'm sorry?
And he remembered you. Look at that. Look at that. You are that voice in his head.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that you ended up becoming one of his favorite teachers, which leads us
Oh,
into.
I don't know about that, but
Well, I was trying to do a nice segue into the next portion. The namesake of the podcast, which is your favorite teacher's favorite teacher. And so, in this portion of the podcast, I just like you to share with the audience teachers that may have had an impact on you. Could have been when you were younger, could have been, since we're in education, could have been somebody while we were in education, like Miss White. But just any teacher that has made an impact on your life, and what that's meant to you. This is your opportunity to give them their roses.
Sally Gunn, she
Okay.
was my third grade teacher. She is the reason that I got into education
Awesome.
because I wanted to be somebody like her
Okay.
because of the connections that she made with him. Lisa White, who got me to really understand what it meant to be a teacher.
Mhm.
Glenn Welsh, who helped me so much learn what it is to be not well to be a writer, but also to be a writing teacher.
Mm.
Michelle Craig, who she was down for anything. She taught at that time we had two separate classes, reading and writing, and she taught the writing half, and I taught reading, and we shared a lot of kids, and that's when reading workshop was became. It's around the time that we really started to embrace like a workshop
Wow.
um, um, it looked like workshop in our classes, but in order to really workshop, you have to teach reading and writing together.
Together. Yeah.
And so we went together to our principal and asked if for the next year, could we please um, do this? We would each teach a block. And he was like, no. We're
Mm.
like, okay. I don't like no. I don't like the word no. Um, and I know it was because of scheduling. And so he goes, but if y'all can figure out what you need to do, like you can switch kids or whatever.
Hmm.
And so we went to the counselors and bribed them with, I think, home baked goods to give us so that we had the same kids
Right.
in different classes, so that we ended up working together and being able to do that. And that was an incredible experience.
Wow.
I don't know. There's just been so many. Amanda McDaniel, she taught math, and we shared a lot of kids. Rachel Grubb, she's an AP in one of our high schools now.
Hmm.
Um, she and I were instructional coaches together in one of the junior highs, and um, being able to have someone who you taught alongside and then moved into the role of coach. And she and
Hmm.
I worked on our um, admin certification together. Um, she's just an incredible human being, such a great educator. Kevin LaFollette, he teaches history in a high school now.
Oh, wow.
He
You
was
know
an
LaFollette? I
instructional.
know him.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. He's incredible. All of the instructional coaches that I work with right now are teach me so much
Hmm.
in every interaction. You know, I just learn so much.
Wow.
I can't, that's the problem, right? Is
Yes.
there's so many of my favorite teachers.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
can't,
and
that's not a fair question, William.
I
Let's just,
apologize. I do
I just,
apologize.
man, because I could just go on and on about all of this.
Oh, wow.
My daughter,
I
I
bet you'd
mean,
love to hear that.
she's Lauren Calvert. She stays home with her kids right now. She's a home engineer, I think is
Mhm.
what she calls herself. I don't know. Um, but she was an incredible educator. She um just a phenomenal educator. My son, he's not an educator, but he has taught me so much about ambition and drive and passion.
Oh,
Um, my husband, he's not an educator, but I don't know. I just he
well,
he is he is like, you know, do you want to break out into Celine Dion? I can.
go
You know,
ahead.
I'm not.
Go, no, go ahead. Go
You
ahead.
know, I mean, I can't get that high. Also, I've only had one cup of coffee this morning, so um, but he has supported me in everything that I do,
Yeah.
uh,
Well,
and
and that is the
I learned
thing.
so much from him. You know,
One of the very first episodes, well, the first two episodes, I interviewed my good friends, and one of our good friends, his father was like one of my favorite teachers, even though he was not in education at all. He mentored us growing up as men, and you know, just because we're saying teacher doesn't mean that it has to be somebody in education. But,
no.
but, but let me ask you this, since you brought this up. Um, how does it feel to have your daughter follow in your footsteps and become an educator? Like, how did that make you feel when, like, she first came to you and was like, I want to do education?
Well, she was 7.
I am so sorry. That probably was very loud in the headphones. 7 years old. When
Yeah,
she
she was
said,
7.
wow.
Um, we had a spare room in our house,
Mm-hmm.
and it was her classroom for all of her stuffed
Wow.
animals and her dolls.
Wow.
Um, there was one Christmas that Santa brought her an overhead projector because she
Really?
had a big wall where she could project. She had all kinds of workbooks.
Oh my.
Um, if I had extra papers, I would bring them home to her, and those were her students' assignments. Um,
Wow.
mhm.
So
She,
from a very early age,
mhm,
she
mhm,
so let me ask you this. Do you think that uh you said you said earlier when you were going through your teacher certification course, you brought them right along with you. Do
mhm.
you think that that might have played a role in her wanting to be an educator too?
I don't know, William, but that's a great question. Um,
That's awesome.
that's a really good question.
At
But
a young age, man,
mhm,
I wish my
yeah.
kids would follow in my footsteps
And
and
I don't even, I don't know that there was ever any, if she entertained doing anything else, I
yeah,
didn't know about it. Like when
that
she went to college, she knew she was gonna, she only applied to one college.
hmm
She had a backup plan. And if she didn't get in that first year, and so
that's something.
she, what she did.
That's crazy. That is from that early of age. I know my family will tell you that education is something I always wanted to do, but I cannot say at 7 years old I wanted to do education. Wow, that's amazing. But this now leads us into the next portion of the podcast, which I like to call a word or a phrase. And we spoke briefly before we began this, and your word that you wanted to address was literacy. This is a word that you feel passionate about. So I'm going to turn the mic over and let you talk to the audience about literacy, its importance, um, how you feel about it as well. So you have the floor.
Um, it's not just where my career is grounded,
Hmm
but I truly believe that literacy is the key for our students. If I think that if you're not able to read and write coherently,
hmm
that you may encounter a lot of um, struggles. I'm not saying you can't be successful. Um, I'm just saying I think that it's harder.
Yes.
Being able to read and understand um, text, even if even if you are not considering um, pursuing a college education, if you're going to go into the trades, you still have to be able to read. You've got to be able to read. You've got to be able to draft up contracts. You've got to be able to read contracts. What are you signing? What are those plans? What are those agreements? So that you don't get ripped off.
So true.
Um, Literacy it opens our world up when we are able to read and transport ourselves through the eyes of somebody else and the thoughts of somebody else. It just opens up a world that we may not be able to otherwise experience. And then being able to write and write about our stories and our lives is um, so important because you think about. I have a journal that I'm on vacation right now,
hmm
um, and hence the beach attire here. Um, but yeah, I'm writing about our what we're doing every day, and there's nothing big, but it's those little moments that make it so important. And if we're not able to keep those down and put
hmm
those down in ink, those they become memories, but memories can sometimes get a bit foggy.
Yes.
Um, I just, you know, and when I'm thinking about literacy, I'm not thinking about passing state testing and that's important, and it's important because it graduation hinges on it, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
That's why that's important. But I'm talking about really learning to read and make sense of text and
Hmm.
what authors are trying to tell us. What
Hmm.
do they want us to know? And then also being able to write and communicate
Right.
what we want others to know about us.
Right.
You know,
And
think about even TikTok, right? So I will tell you, I'm a closet TikTok watcher.
you can come out the
And
closet and let everybody know.
mhm, and what I mean by that is I don't put the volume up. And so I
You
don't
just
if
read it.
I just read them. And so what happens is if there's not there's not text on the TikTok, I scroll by. If there's text on the TikTok and I don't understand what you're saying because you're not very coherent, I scroll by. So if you want more views, type what you're saying and make it coherent. I don't know. Is that how it happens? Or do
Uh,
they record it?
well, from
I don't
my
know how it happens.
understanding, there
Anyway,
is AI that does the typing. It transcribes what's being said. Um, a
well,
closet TikToker.
maybe consider typing it instead. Because
Well,
sometimes AI is not getting it right. I know
well,
that's a shocker.
here's the and here's the thing too. You're talking about the ability to communicate, writing
Mhm.
it down. Like whenever we watch a movie, they have to have a script. So it's nothing wrong with these
Right.
TikTokers creating a script for themselves as they put that stuff together. You are
I
absolutely
probably should have created a script
right.
for this, William.
No, no, I listen. Here's one thing, and I will give you your flowers on this. I like it when you come off the cuff. You are one of the best storytellers that I have met in my life. You like when we have our IC Fridays and you are giving us stories, it's just like I hang on every word that you say. And like
Oh gosh.
it
Okay.
is no, you
Now I'm
are
going back. I'm like, oh gosh, what stories am I telling you today?
no, they're great. They are fantastic. I love them. Um yes, literacy all the points that you made, I 110% agree. I started my career in education teaching history, and a lot of the stuff that my students struggle with, I felt that if they could read, if they could comprehend, if they could analyze the text that they're reading, then they would be more successful. And I look at society today, and a lot of people in society today are, for lack of a better term, like they're hoodwinked, bamboozled by the media telling them different things because the stuff that we read, we don't take time to analyze it. We don't take time to truly understand what the text is saying. And so now we have adults that are struggling in just day-to-day things, dealing with government, dealing with their health care. And you brought this up with contracts. I think back to, and you have us singing that song, Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls. I think back to that group, TLC, when they talked about how their contract gave them pennies on the dollar, but it's written out in the contract. And if you are able to analyze that text, that contract, and truly understand what's being said in there, then you won't get robbed. So
Mhm.
like you're like I say, I agree with you 110%. Literacy is so important. And it creates these analytical thinkers that would bring us up out of this craziness that we live in today.
You know, it I think it would help us become think for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
right? And not let somebody think on behalf of us.
Exactly.
So, because when we're listening and we do that think alike instead of really learning and investigating and following our those little um, curiosities and do our own learning about topics that we feel passionate about, um, then they're not our own thoughts.
Mhm.
And what everybody, what you think is just as important as what anybody else thinks, but you don't
Mhm.
want somebody to think for you.
Exactly. That
Right?
that part right there is
Don't
so
think
many.
for me.
Yes. And it's so many people because they are not um I don't want to say they're not readers. They're not analytical readers, I guess. That they'll just take stuff for face value. And literacy is actually that analyzing the text is actually part of the literacy because it comes into the comprehension aspect of it. In order for you to comprehend, you have to know, or as we say, read between the lines and be able to understand what the author's purpose is, what the author is trying to convey. So,
Mhm.
yes, that is huge.
Yeah,
And I want to thank you for that because I cannot emphasize the importance of that word literacy because it spans across all of the contents: history, science, math, even math. People would like to think that uh, literacy doesn't play a role in math when it 110% does.
it
Uh,
does. Can I add one thing,
Go ahead.
William?
Yes.
And part of literacy and what I think is really important is story,
Hmm.
right? Because the stories are what helps us unite. I think about the best history teacher that I walked into her classroom. My gosh, I can't remember her name. I'm trying to come up with it and I cannot for the life of me remember her name. As soon as we hang up, I'll remember. Um, was teaching seventh grade Texas history
Hmm.
to a bunch of 12-year-olds who could have tuned her out, but they didn't. And they didn't because instead of teaching about like just the dry bare bones of Santa Ana and putting a text in front of them, she was teaching them, she was reading them or telling them, I guess it was really a story about, I mean, it was very gruesome. It was a
Hmm.
very gruesome story about how they would torture the soldiers by attaching a limb on four different
Horses.
horses and
Yep.
then send and the kids were absolutely taken, and through that story she wove in
Hmm.
all of the facts that they needed to know.
Hmm.
And those kids, they could tell you that story, but within that story was the history that she wanted them to know. Right.
Exactly.
And so that has always stuck with me. And that's been many, 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 many years. But like I can see myself in her classroom. And I just walked in for a second. I think I was dropping something off.
Hmm.
And I sat down and I stayed the whole class because I was enraptured. And well, I knew before that, because I was an educator, that story was important. That's when I realized how important it is um, to being a literate human being,
Yep.
is
Yes.
pulling together um, your story and hearing other people's stories.
Yes. So important. Hence why we have your favorite teacher podcast. These stories are important. They, I mean, especially in today's society, I really want to get all of these teachers' messages out and their stories out to the public because people just think that all we do is teach. We do so much more than teaching. The the thing that you spoke about early, the volunteering of time, the being a part of the community, the lesson planning, the all of the other stuff that we do. 120 other things besides teaching that we do in the classroom with the students. And this brings us to the end of the podcast. And at this point, what I want to do is I want to turn the podcast over to you for any final words, and let the audience know where they can find you if you have any social medias or anything like that. Um, so you have the final word here. I'll turn it over to you and let you talk to the audience.
All right. Thanks, William. This has been a pleasure. When you first asked me to do it, I was kind of nervous. But I can tell a story. So, and I don't mind sharing my story. But thanks very much. This has been a lot of fun. I'm glad that this is the time that we chose to do it. I'm sitting out here in beautiful Florida, enjoying some time with my grandkids and my daughter, and just really appreciate you helping me travel back and really think about my story. I'm thinking right now that I need to go in and write down some of these details. So I appreciate all of that. Um, and you can find me on social media. I think I'm Nina Anderson on Facebook, I think. And then maybe Nina Anderson _11 on Instagram. And I think I'm Nina Anderson 16. I don't know. I just took what they gave me,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
And on it's not Twitter anymore. It's X,
X. Yeah.
on X. Um, so feel free to follow me. I on Facebook and Instagram. You have to request. So,
Yes, yes. And you have some
and I will
great
tell you,
posts.
man, if you want to be absolutely peppered with images of my family, that's my social media. X is where I do more of my professional stuff.
That's awesome. I want to thank you for doing this. As always, fantastic storyteller. I know you say you're journaling all of this stuff. You should turn it into a book. I I I know that that's going to be a bestseller. So thank you, Miss Anderson, and this is
Thanks,
us
William.
signing off. Peace.
Peace.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Your Favorite Teacher's Favorite Teacher podcast. If you have a story you'd like to share, please contact me at wdstubblefield@wdsi.us. Again, that is wdstubblefield@wdsi.us. And you could be our next inspirational story of how educators impact our lives. I'm your host, Mr. Stubblefield, and I want you to remember, no profession is possible without your favorite teacher.